There's a strange silence inside empty rooms, a silence that touches something ancient in the human mind, a stillness so deep it feels as if the walls are listening, as if the air is holding a secret you're not supposed to hear. Empty rooms do not frighten because they contain nothing. They frighten because they remove everything that once kept you distracted. And in that sudden quiet, you meet the echoes you've been avoiding. An empty room feels harmless at first. Just four walls, a door, a little dust. Nothing dangerous, nothing strange. But step inside and something shifts. The air thickens. The silence becomes too precise, too complete. And the mind begins to whisper questions you never agree to answer. In these moments, people often feel a subtle tightening in the chest, a quiet unease, as though the emptiness has eyes. They pause at the doorway, unsure why the stillness feels heavy, why the shadows seem to breathe, why even the sound of their own footsteps feels intrusive, as if they are trespassing into a space abandoned by time. This discomfort isn't dramatic. It's gentle, slow creeping, a feeling that doesn't scream, it lingers. People often mistake it for superstition or imagination, but the mind is reacting to something real. The sudden loss of noise, movement, warmth, and meaning. Empty rooms don't just lack objects. They lack the emotional traces that make a place feel human. There's no laughter dried into the corners, no memories hanging like dust particles in the sun, and so the room feels foreign, unanchored, slightly dangerous in its neutrality. Most people don't fear the emptiness itself. They fear the version of themselves that appears in the quiet, the thoughts that rise, the memories that breathe again, the truths that suddenly have the space to surface. It isn't the room that becomes frightening. It's the silence that becomes honest. Human beings were never shaped by stillness. The earliest minds learned safety through sound, crackling fire, rustling leaves, the murmurs of a nearby tribe. Noise meant life. Noise meant protection. Noise meant someone else is here. But emptiness, silence, a place with no movement and no human presence, those were signals of vulnerability. Spaces like that carried risk. A predator could watch from the dark. Danger could hide behind quiet. This ancestral memory lives inside people even now. A quiet room taps into the same instinct that told ancient humans, be alert. Something is missing. There's also another layer, a psychological one. Humans are deeply attached to the emotional residue of places. A room filled with furniture carries the imprint of life. A room emptied out feels like abandonment, like loss, like something ended before you arrived. An empty childhood bedroom after moving out. An apartment stripped clean after heartbreak. A hospital room once occupied by someone you loved. These moments teach the mind that emptiness is not neutral. It is symbolic. When people stand in an empty room, they feel echoes of every loss they've ever carried. The absence becomes a mirror. It reflects the parts of life that disappeared. People who left, versions of the self that vanished, moments that can never return. This is why the fear feels older than the room in front of you. You're not reacting to the present. You're reacting to centuries of instinct and years of personal memory that whisper the same message. Emptiness is where things end and where you must face what remains. The mind hates blanks. It fills them automatically, instinctively, with meaning, memory, or threat. When a room is full, the mind organizes itself around objects. A table anchors space. A chair offers belonging. A photograph creates warmth. But remove everything, and the brain loses its orientation. It enters what psychologists call cognitive uncertainty, a subtle discomfort when the environment doesn't provide cues about what should happen next. In an empty room, nothing guides the senses. There is no context, no narrative, no emotional anchor, just space. And the mind hates unexplained space. To resolve the discomfort, it begins projecting thoughts, fears, possibilities, ghosts, not supernatural ones, but emotional ghosts, fragments of unresolved anxieties. The silence amplifies internal noise. Every thought sounds louder. Every emotion becomes sharper. Every insecurity feels as if it's expanding across the walls. This is why empty rooms often trigger sudden self-awareness, intrusive thoughts, flashes of past memories, an urge to leave quickly, a feeling of being observed, even when nobody is there. It's not paranoia. It's the brain searching for pattern, meaning, and story. In a space that offers none, the emptier the room, the louder the inner world becomes. The quieter the walls, the more your mind fills them. People say empty rooms feel haunted, not by spirits, but by everything unresolved inside them. The fear is not of the room. The fear is of the psyche, suddenly visible in a vast, echoing quiet. Inside an empty room, the first instinct is almost always the same. Fill the silence, escape the stillness, avoid the confrontation with the self. Some people flip on a light, some speak aloud, some leave the door half open, just enough to maintain the illusion of connection. Others step out immediately, pretending they forgot why they entered in the first place. This resistance is not weakness. It's the natural recoil from meeting one's own mind. Without distraction, in daily life, noise keeps the psyche in motion. Busy, occupied, preoccupied. Phones glow. Voices hum. Tasks pile up. There's always something to outrun yourself with. But in an empty room, there is nothing left to hide behind. You notice the ache you've been ignoring, the thought you didn't want to think, the memory you've kept buried under routine. Stillness makes them float to the surface. And this is where the conflict begins. A part of you wants to stay and see what rises. Another part wants to flee before the truth arrives. People often feel this battle as a tightness in the throat, a flutter in the stomach, a sudden urge to check their phone, or a strange discomfort that has no clear source. The quiet becomes a spotlight, and the mind becomes the performer, forced into honesty. Nothing in the room is dangerous, yet everything in the psyche feels exposed. The emptiness becomes a canvas, where suppressed emotions finally find space to move. This is the fear beneath the fear, not of being harmed, but of being revealed. There comes a moment, however small, when the fear inside an empty room softens. Not because the room changes, but because something inside shifts. The silence stops feeling hostile and begins to feel honest. The stillness stops feeling threatening and begins to feel clarifying. It is the moment when the mind recognizes this space isn't empty. It's simply unoccupied, and everything I felt was mine. This realization dissolves the imagined presence, the vague dread, the sense of being watched. The room becomes just a room again, quiet, spacious, neutral, a place without story, until you decide to give it one. This turning point often brings subtle relief, a slow exhale, a loosening in the shoulders, a gentle awareness that nothing is hunting you except your own unresolved feelings. The edges of the fear blur, the shadows lose their shape, the silence becomes less of a confrontation and more of a mirror. In that moment, people often notice things they couldn't see a few minutes earlier. The way light spills across the floor, the softness of the air, the peacefulness of stillness itself. The room no longer feels alive with threat. It feels alive with possibility. When the mind stops filling the emptiness with fear, it begins filling it with clarity, with reflection, with quiet truths that only appear when the world pauses long enough to let them breathe. This is the moment where the psyche learns something profound. Emptiness is not a void. It is a space where meaning is waiting to be created. Once the mind recognizes its own projections, the empty room becomes something entirely different. Not a threat, but a threshold. Healing doesn't happen through force. It happens through recognition, through understanding the layers beneath the fear. An empty room becomes a place where the psyche can finally slow down, a place where the noise of the world fades, and the deeper currents of thought become visible. People begin to sense a quiet kind of comfort, the safety of a space without expectations, the relief of no emotional residue, the calm of a place unburdened by memory. The room becomes a blank page, not accusing, not haunting, simply available. Healing in this context means learning to coexist with one's inner world, without resistance. The stillness teaches the body that quiet is not danger, that emptiness is not abandonment, that silence is not punishment. It becomes a space where people can meet themselves gently, not with fear, but with curiosity. The mind learns to sit with thoughts that once felt too sharp, to breathe through feelings that once felt too heavy. Slowly, the room transforms from a place people avoid to a place they return to, for clarity, for grounding, for a moment of unfiltered presence. The healing is subtle, almost invisible, a shift in how the psyche responds to emptiness, from threat to honesty, from fear to acceptance. And without realizing it, the empty room becomes less of a place and more of a state of mind, a space within where nothing is hidden and everything can be understood. Empty rooms frighten the mind because they remove the world and leave only the self. But in that exposed quiet, something tender begins to happen. The shadows soften, the echoes calm, the silence becomes a companion instead of a warning. Fear fades when the mind understands that emptiness is not a presence, but an invitation to breathe, to release, to see, to listen to the parts of yourself that only speak when everything else grows still. In the end, the room wasn't haunting you. It was waiting for you to stop running, to stop filling every corner with noise, to finally hear the truth your life has been too loud to reveal. Empty rooms are not scary. They are honest. And sometimes, honesty is the quietest place a human heart can stand.